Welcome, Youngians, to Dawn of the New Earth. Today, we are talking about tarot, and we are revealing a secret that hardly anyone talks about. We are cracking open tarot and discovering what it really means. This is important stuff. We're going to be discovering how to use tarot, how to understand tarot. First of all, like what it actually even is, why we use it, and how we can use it to understand the structure of reality, how it connects to the tree of life, and how to understand it as a tool for reaching higher and higher levels of consciousness. This is really important stuff, extremely interesting information, and there is a lot to talk about. I have a ton of notes for this. And by the way, speaking of notes, if you haven't become a member, please do. It helps out the channel a lot, and you get access to free downloads of my notes. I provide notes for my videos. So I have a whole bunch of them for members for inner alchemy, inner transformation. I'm putting one out this week on a manifestation ritual called the will forming ritual. And you're going to have access to notes for this video as well when I put them out. That's going to have all the information we talk about there in a way that you can easily refer to and understand. But also, yeah, hey, make sure you like and subscribe. If you haven't already, check out my books. If you like what we talk about here, I recommend this one. This is Psychogenesis, Self and Universal Transformation. If you like the idea of understanding inner star actualization, the shadow self, the mirror self, the power self, reaching higher levels of consciousness, manifestation through will forming, this is the book to check out. And follow me on Spotify as well. Links for all that stuff are in the description of this video. You can check them all out. All right, so let's get started. We are going to be talking about the tarot and its connection to the tree of life and what it really is. There's a lot of great stuff to dig into today. So before we start, let's just discuss what the hell is even tarot cards? What are they? What are they for? Because remember, this is all about understanding. Well, on this channel, we talk about things in a rational way, not a woo-woo kind of way. And so some people think, aren't tarot cards woo-woo? Isn't it about predicting the future? Isn't it about fortune telling, etc.? So here's the thing. Tarot is not about predicting the future or doing anything woo-woo. What tarot is understanding a way to communicate with your unconscious mind through a set of symbolism. So the tarot cards themselves are a collection of archetypal symbols. And these archetypal symbols resonate with your unconscious mind because your unconscious communicates in symbols, not in language, not in the kind of language that we speak. It speaks in symbolism, images, archetypal patterns. And so when one does, so here's a cool thing. If you want, you could do a tarot reading for yourself right now, even if you didn't know a single thing about the meaning of the tarot cards. And I'll tell you why. So first of all, when one does a reading, what is it? It's not about predicting what's going to happen in the future. It's about communicating with your unconscious mind and revealing what is hidden and growing psychologically. So the reason why I said that you don't need to know a single thing about what the tarot cards mean to give it a read, to do a reading for yourself, is because how tarot cards work. They're kind of like a Rorschach test. How you know a Rorschach test or an ink blot test in psychology, where it's cards with just blots of ink, and you hold it up, and to someone might be like, the psychologist will say, "Oh, what does this look like to you?" And someone might be like, "Oh, that looks like a butterfly." Another person might be like, "Oh, that looks like an axe." Another person might be like, "Oh, that looks like my mother." And it's like, "Okay, why did you say that?" And so your unconscious is projecting something, projecting meaning onto those cards, and it can reveal what's going on in your unconscious depending on what gets projected. So tarot cards work in a very similar way. They are projective, but they're not 100% projective. In terms of Rorschach tests, it's all projective. It's just a blot of ink. With tarot cards, they have rich symbolic imagery in it. So there's still images coming from the cards that are defined. It's not 100% or very. Rorschach tests are hardly defined at all. They're just blots of ink. These are defined, but you're still projecting something on it. So, for example, if you don't know anything at all about like tarot cards, and one was to hold up this card and be like, well, what does this mean to you? You'd go over it and see what your eye is drawn to. What does it remind you of in your past? What aspect of it is really calling you? And two people might answer completely differently. Now, the thing is, I had these in order. Now I just put this out of order. The thing is, when it comes to this, is that so there are Jungian psychologists who will actually use tarot cards in their practice. And I'm just giving you an overview here. We're going to get to a lot more interesting stuff in just a minute, but I want to give you an overview of these cards. So Jungian, there are depth psychologists, analytical psychologists, Jungians, who use tarot cards in their practice with clients for a variety of reasons. That's not the focus of this video. We'll talk about that at some point in the future if you guys want to see that. If you guys want to see more about like a psychological breakdown, let me know. Tell me in the comments. We can talk about that. And ways to like give readings in those terms. But Jungian psychologists, some of them, when they are having their client describe the cards to them, they say, stay away from the traditional interpretations. Throw out the traditional interpretations. Because if you have the traditional interpretations memorized and I show you the Chariot, you're going to be like, oh, well, that's willpower. Show someone else the Chariot. Oh, that's willpower. Someone else the Chariot. Oh, that's will. They are not tapping into their unconscious. They've simply memorized the definition, and therefore it's just consciousness now. It's just conscious. You've taken it, before it's a tool to tap into your unconscious. Now it's just consciousness. So there are Jungians who'll be like, throw out the traditional interpretation. So you could grab a deck right now and start to begin to explore your psyche without knowing a single thing about the cards. And some psychologists would be like, that's way better. Now, personally, I don't go that far. I think that there is something to be said to having a structure to it and understanding the definitions. And I like a more syncretic aspect where you do have the definitions understood, but if your unconscious pulls you towards something else, that it means something different, then go with that. I'll give you a brief example. So for example, like the Three of Swords, it depicts three swords stabbing a heart. This is traditionally interpreted as heartbreak. To me, that doesn't really resonate with me. Sometimes it may. What resonates for me more is using logic over emotion. That's to me more what that card resonates with, because it's the suit of swords, so it has to do not with emotion, but with logic and intellect and ideas, and it corresponds to the Binah sphere on the Tree of Life, and so to me, that's what that has more meaning for me there. Anyway, enough of that. I just want to get across to you that tarot cards are a psychological tool, and you are using them and understanding their symbolism to be able to communicate with your unconscious mind and to be able to have a dialogue with your unconscious mind and figure out what issues that you need to work on. But more than that, we can use them as a symbolic way to understand the structure of the universe as well, and this is a very cool part, how to reach higher and higher levels of consciousness. We can use them as a very powerful tool to do that. So let's just jump right into it because we have a lot to talk about. So we are going to be, today, what we are going to be talking about is the major arcana and how it connects to the Tree of Life and how that represents the descent of spirit into matter. And if you guys enjoy this topic, let me know in the comments, because if you want, we will then in the next video continue to go from the bottom to the top, ascending the tree, which represents a climb to higher consciousness and how to develop your consciousness, okay? But today we are talking about, we're setting the stage. We are talking about how the major arcana connects to the Tree of Life and how it represents the descent of spirit into matter and the structure of the universe and the structure of your mind. That's what we're doing. Now, I want to make something very, very clear that when we do this, this is understanding the structure of the universe in a symbolic way, not a rigorous, objective way. And that's very important. If we want to understand the universe in a rigorous, objective way, look up my book, Meta-Rationalism, because then you get into mathematics and the mechanics of light. And it's very in-depth, very detailed, and you need to understand how mathematics unfolds into the structures of light and how light interacts to form the diverse structures of matter. That's what we would study and what I have written about for understanding the structure of the cosmos and yourself and reality objectively. What we're doing today is understanding it through symbols and through a story of the cards and how it connects to the tree. Because some people, that's an easier way to begin to understand it. Now, ideally, you'd want both, though. Ideally, you'd want to understand it logically and objectively as well as symbolically. But today, we're going to look at it symbolically. And so we have here the Tree of Life, and then we have these tarot cards associated. So there are 22 major arcana. There are 22 major arcana. And guess what? There are 22 paths on the Tree of Life. And so each of the paths on the Tree of Life corresponds to a card in their major arcana. It's even been said, perhaps by Lan Mailu Duquette, I'm not sure, that tarot is the DNA of Kabbalah. That tarot is the DNA of the Tree of Life. And by the way, in the future, we'll talk about the minor arcana as well, but today we're concentrating on the major arcana. So, each one of these paths is represented by a tarot card. And there are 22 paths. However, one thing I want to point out before we start, because this is really important and some people might be kind of confused about this, the first path is going to be right here, which is the Fool. That's going to be the first path. However, technically, this is defined as path 11. Now, that might be sound kind of confusing. Why are we starting with path 11? Is that weird? It's a little weird, yes. That's because in total, there are actually 32 paths. Why are there 32 paths? Because each of the Sephirot themselves count as a path. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 Sephirot and 22 paths, totaling 32. This also corresponds, by the way, to lessons learned in the 32 grades of Freemasonry, according to Manly P. Hall. But that's neither here nor there. That's just an interesting fact. You can read it in his book, The Secret Teachings of All Ages. It's a great book. So what we are doing, okay? So if you've watched my previous videos, we have described the 10 Sephirot or Sephirot and how they interact with each other. If you've watched my videos on Kabbalah, if you haven't, that's okay, it doesn't matter. But if you have, you've seen that video where we've described each of the 10. And we've described essentially the descent from Keter all the way to Malkut in that lightning flash of creation. That's 1 to 10. Now, what we are, so basically in previous videos, we've seen how the Sephirot themselves are established. Now we're basically seeing how the paths are established. All right, so the first descent is the lightning flash down, 1 to 10, and then a more sort of like detailed descent by understanding the paths. Hopefully that makes sense. That's a lot to take in. It's a little weird sometimes how they explain stuff in Kabbalah, but you'll get the hang of it. It's really not that confusing once we start. So we're going to start with the first path, but it's actually path 11, okay? Because we did the 10 spheres or sephirots, and now we're doing the first of the paths, but if we count the sephirot as a path, then it's the 11th, okay? I know. So let's do this. So what we're going to do is for each of these, make sure that glare isn't there. I need to get better lighting for this. So for each of these, we're going to take a look at the card and the path that it corresponds to. So for example, the Fool corresponds to path 11. It's the first path. And in order to demonstrate the path that we're taking, what I'm going to do is put a coin here and here, just so you can more clearly see what path it is that we're talking about. So since we're talking about the Fool, I'm going to put a coin here and here to show that we are talking about this path right here. And the reason why we want to do that as well is because each of these paths are going to kind of combine the forces of the two sephirot that it connects to. So this, the Fool, connects these two sephirot, which is Keter and Chokhmah, or Keter and Chokmah. So Keter and Chokmah is called the path of the Fool. And so now with all that, hopefully you got a good background, foundation of what the heck we're actually doing today. Let's actually do it. I got a lot of notes here. Remember, I'll be providing these notes for members at some point. So let's get started. So the first path is the path of the Fool. Now, the traditional interpretation of the Fool is about new beginnings, fresh starts, taking a leap of faith. It's about adventure and stepping into the unknown and trusting that things are gonna work out. That is the traditional meaning of the Fool. And you can see the Fool is sort of taking that leap of faith. There's a cliff right over here. And this symbolizes, his whole image symbolizes taking risks, new beginnings, trust in the unknown. He's got a white rose that represents purity. He's got a backpack that hasn't come open yet. And so that's the traditional interpretation. So for each of these, I'm going to tell you its traditional interpretation, then what it means on the path, because what it means on the path might be slightly different. So the cool thing about this is that as you watch this video, you're going to learn about tarot and the Tree of Life at the same time, and you're going to be well more equipped because understanding both is going to make you understand more about the Tree of Life, and understanding this is also going to make you understand more about the tarot than, you know, the average practitioner. So let's talk about this. So as I said, what the traditional interpretation means. So what the hell does it mean that it's a path from Keter to Chokmah, or Keter to Chokmah? What it means is that this path represents pure unity, which is Keter. Keter represents pure unity, and Chokmah represents the first spark of cosmic energy. Pure unity, the first spark of cosmic energy. So think of this path as the universe taking its very first step into existence. That's the Fool. It's pure divine energy just bursting onto the scene, totally unshaped, but packed, like the bag, with limitless possibilities. Basically, it's the universe saying, all right, let's get started, and laying the groundwork for everything else to unfold. So hopefully you can see the process that we're doing here. I'm going to show you the card, give the traditional interpretation, and then show you what it means in terms of the path on the Tree of Life from the top, going down and spirit descending into matter. So this is basically describing creation, if you will, the structure of the cosmos, from the most divine to the most material. So let's continue to get a better grasp on what we're doing here. So the next card or path is the Magician. And this path goes from Keter to Bina. So it's this path here. And the Magician's typical traditional interpretation is manifesting your goals, having skill, and creating reality through focused intention, and about taking action and making things happen. That's essentially what the Magician is usually about. It's about manifestation. Now, you can see that he points upwards and downwards, meaning as above, so below, connecting the symbolizing connection between the physical and the spiritual. And then on the table, you can see he has the 4 suits. Because remember, in tarot, there's the wands, the swords, the cups, and the pentacles. The wands, the swords, the cups, and the pentacles are the 4 suits. But guess what? That also corresponds to the 4 elements. So wands are fire, cups are water, swords are air, and pentacles are earth. And each one of these represents a faculty. Fire represents willpower. And sword represents intellect. Cups represents emotion and intuition. Pentacles represents groundedness and practicality. And so the Magician, you can see, is very structured. He has his tools spread and ready and can manipulate them with expertise. So that's the traditional meaning. In terms of the path, the Magician links Keter to Bina, Keter to Bina, which is divine unity, the ultimate source. And what does Bina represent? If you remember, Bina represents structure. And so while the Fool was all about raw potential and energy, this path is different. This path is the path of the Magician, which is essentially creating clear, structured blueprints. This is the path where the universe starts to organize itself, laying down defined patterns. Basically, the building blocks for everything to come. So the path of the Fool, pure energy. The path of the Magician, the blueprint of reality. And see how that works? Keter to Chokhmah. Keter means unity. Chokhmah means raw energy. Keter means unity. Bina means structured systems. And so you can see how these relate. I won't repeat myself so much in future cards. I'm just kind of doing it the first couple ones so that for those who are new to this, it'll click what it is that we're actually doing. And just in case you aren't familiar with the different Sefirot and their meanings. So moving on to, I love this card. This is the High Priestess. This is one of my favorite cards. It's such a beautiful card, and it's just packed with meaning. It's such a cool card. So the High Priestess traditionally means intuition, hidden knowledge, inner wisdom, secrets. And it's about listening to your inner voice. And before I forget, let's show what path this is. This is from Keter to Tiferet. Keter to Tiferet. You can see this is the High Priestess right here. And there's so much going on in this imagery. First of all, she sits between 2 pillars. And these 2 pillars represent the 2 pillars on the tree of life. And what does she represent? She's the middle. She's right in the middle between the 2 pillars on the tree of life. This is the pillar of severity, and this is the pillar of mercy, represented by the black pillar and the white pillar. Now, if you'll also notice, what's behind her is a veil. And the veil is decorated by pomegranates. Pomegranates are often symbols of hidden knowledge and the underworld, if you know the story of Persephone. But if you'll notice, there's something else about these pomegranates, is that they're shaped into the tree of life. It's a tree of life pattern. So these top 3 pomegranates are the supernal triad, the top 3 on the tree of life. And guess what's so cool about this? Notice her crown, it's a perfect circle. Why is that? Because it is, remember, the High Priestess is about secrets and that which is hidden. Well, her crown goes right on the hidden Sephirot of Da'at. So that's why, see, there's this big empty space here, because there's a hidden Sephirot right in the middle, which is Da'at, which is about knowledge. So she is essentially the veil and indicates the connection to intuitive realms. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. So we've explained the traditional interpretation. What does it mean on the path? Well, again, she's going from Keter, which is pure unity, divine source, to Tiferet. Or Tiferet. So what does Tiferet represent? Tiferet represents cosmic harmony and balance. That's what Tiferet represents. But it also represents our subjective center of awareness and the organizing process of our minds. All right? So it represents balance and harmony, and also the organizing center of our subjectivity. So what Tiferet does is it organizes. And so the path of the High Priestess, because remember, what we're describing right now is the descent of spirit into matter. So this path of the High Priestess represents creating a cosmic veil. Imagine it like pulling up a curtain between the higher divine realms and the more manifest concrete realms, or even the more manifest or aspects of consciousness that we have access to. So this path represents the descent of spirit into matter, where things become hidden or secret, where the universe creates boundaries between the divine essence and what will ultimately become physical reality. Or in terms of the soul, the higher realms of consciousness and the lower realms of consciousness. So this is where the veil. Do you see how we're going from pure unity to lower and lower forms? Different aspects are, we go from pure energy to the blueprints to a veil being put up. And by the way, if you're wondering why the hell does this matter? Is it useful at all? Yes, it is. And I'll explain why at the end, but we have to understand this structure first. So the next path is the path of the Empress. And I'm going to try and do these a little bit faster so that we have enough time to get through all of them here today. So this is the path of the Empress. You can see her right here. Traditionally, she represents nurturing energy, creativity, abundance, fertility, growth, and comfort. It's about expressing love and nurturing projects or relationships. You can see that she has a very fertile appearance. She's around, trees and nature. She has her wheel, or whatever this is in the symbol of a heart and the symbol of Venus, representing love and harmony. She also has pomegranates, but her pomegranates aren't hidden behind a veil. It's more about her fertility. So what does she represent on the tree of life? The Empress links Chokhmah and Binah. And so what was over here? Remember that first burst of cosmic energy is now going over to Binah, which has what? The blueprints of reality. Remember? The Fool gave us the energy. The Magician gave us the blueprints. The Empress is moving the energy to the blueprints. So she represents the nurturing or life giver, giving life, giving energy to the cosmic blueprints, filling those plans with energy. She is like the cosmic womb or the matrix. Matrix means mother's womb in Latin. That's where it comes from. So the cosmic womb, the matrix, it's creating a space where all of existence is going to be able to grow and unfold. So this sets the ideas or turns the energy into structures that now has a space and a fertile ground where creation can truly begin. You see how cool this is? It's very cool stuff. We have the Path of the Fool, gives us energy. We have the Magician that gives us the blueprint. The Empress puts up the veil. Or I'm sorry, the High Priestess puts up the veil. The Empress gives the energy to the blueprints, creating that womb of creation. Super cool. I think it's cool. Hopefully you think it's cool. I do. Next, the Emperor. What does the Emperor represent? Very stern sort of fella here. He represents traditionally structure, authority, discipline, rules, leadership. Represents being organized, stable, and having clear boundaries. We can see a very stern figure seated on a stone, very firm, unmoving throne, symbolizing structure, power, and stability. And the ram's head represents Aries energy, the energy of Aries, which represents strength and leadership. And the path of the Emperor on the Tree of Life is this path right here. This path right here. So what does this mean in terms of the path on the Tree of Life? The Emperor connects Chokhmah to Tiferet. Remember, Chokhmah is the raw primal cosmic energy directed into Tiferet, which represents cosmic balance, but also the organizing center of our subjectivity. So unlike the Magician, who creates the initial blueprints, and the Empress, who provides the energy and nurturing space for those blueprints to develop, the Emperor takes a step further. You have the energy, this raw energy, going to the organizing center. And this is less about nurturing or providing a space and more about establishing firm, disciplined rules and laws. So you can imagine the Emperor as the builder or architect who sets a specific standard and guidelines to make sure that everything stays stable, balanced, and organized over time. So the Emperor is all about directedness and ongoing continual stability. So in other words, the Emperor is all about teleology. Teleology means directed purpose. It comes from the Greek word telos. So the Emperor is about teleology, providing structure, but with purpose and direction. The other ones didn't do that. This one does, purpose and direction. Do you see how each one is building on it? Do you see how each one is building on the previous one as well? Each one isn't its own thing. It builds from the one that came before it. So it's these paths that build on one another. They're not, they all link. They're not separate. So it's teleological. It's about shaping the cosmos towards specific ends or goals. But in terms of our mind or subjectivity, the Emperor is essentially for creating the conditions needed for meaningful choice. You can think of the Emperor makes the decisions, right? He's the Emperor. Makes the decisions. He represents teleology, directedness, and our ability to make choices. It allows the mind to select a certain choice. That is the Emperor. All right, moving on to the next card is the Hierophant. Now, here's something interesting about the Hierophant. In some decks, he's actually called the Pope. And guess what? In some decks, the High Priestess is called the Popess. And you can see, well, if there wasn't glare, move it over there for now, I guess. You can see that they're very similar. You can see that they are extremely similar in between the two, the two pillars, having the crown, etc. And so the Pope, or the Popess and the Pope, or the High Priestess and the Hierophant are related. And we're going to explain why here. So first, let's talk about its traditional interpretation. The traditional interpretation of the Hierophant represents tradition, institutions, education, spiritual teachings, and collective beliefs. Organized, traditional, collective beliefs. It's about learning basically from like established structures and systems. And here we can see a religious figure sitting between two pillars, and the two followers below him, indicating that he's teaching a community. He's teaching a community. Okay, and this path is here, going from Chokhmah to Chesed, or Hokmah to Hesed. So let's talk about what the path of the Hierophant means in terms of the tree of life and the descent of spirit into matter. So it's connecting Hokmah, the realm of pure energy, to Chesed. What is Chesed? Chesed represents growth and expansion and universal empathy. And this particular Sephirot of Chesed is pretty important. The reason why that it's important is because it's the first Sephirot below the supernal triad. If you can see on this one better, maybe more clearly, it's the first one below the supernal, the divine three. It's the first one below. So in a lot of this Sephirot is often almost treated like a connection to divinity. Very godly, very divine. It's like the closest that ordinary consciousness, or not even ordinary consciousness, it's the closest that one can get to divine consciousness without having crossed the abyss. So it's like it's very, very much often connected with divinity, because you have that link right here as well. This is just one step away from the source. This is the pure energy of reality connected to Chesed. So what does this path mean on the tree of life? Well, if the High Priestess represents mysteries and the veil and the unconscious realms, the Hierophant is almost the opposite in a certain way, where he's the teacher who helps the universe speak through archetypes, symbols, patterns, and traditions that shape collective meaning. So he makes the mysteries understandable through symbolism, through tradition, through images, symbolic images, the universal symbols and ideas that we all share deep down. So it's establishing those meaningful archetypal symbolic patterns that we can tune into. Next, we have the lovers. This is a really cool one. I like the lovers card a lot as well. This is another one with so much meaning packed behind it. Traditionally, it represents relationships, connections, choices, harmony, balancing opposites. And so we have two figures represented, masculine and feminine, standing beneath an angel. The angel symbolizes like the higher self and harmony and unity. And we have the two different aspects of ourselves in terms of duality. Behind the masculine figure, we have fire, which represents passion and will. And then behind the feminine figure, we have a tree with the fruit of knowledge. So what does this path represent on the tree of life? On the tree of life, the lovers connects Bina and Gevura. So remember that Bina is the realm of structured form. It gives structure and organization to things. Oh wait, hold on. Actually, these cards might be interchanged. Let me check that real quick. When I was putting this together, I may have interchanged those. Let me double check. So I'm like, wait a minute, that doesn't quite make sense. Yes, I'm sorry. These two need to change. It's a good thing that I didn't glue these on. All right, I can make those fit better. Okay, this makes much more sense. I'm like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. This makes much more sense. All right, let's fix that. So it connects Bina to Tiferet. Well, we know what these means. Remember that Tiferet, Bina is structure and order, and Tiferet is the organizing center of subjectivity and cosmic balance. So essentially what this is where pure unity divides into duality, creating fundamental pairs of opposites like active and passive, light and dark, male and female. But remember, these aren't literal genders. We could use like positive and negative, like in terms of energy as well. Everyone has these within. This is within all of us, okay? So it's not about literal genders. So essentially, this is about the first division of unity into duality, because we have that structure of Bina and that the Tiferet, which organizes. And so it organizes things into a duality. It's still in harmony, though. It's still very much in harmony at this point, okay? There's no like tension or anything. It's in harmony, but it's dual. There are now pairs. All right, now this makes much more sense. We have the Chariot. Chariot represents determination, control, willpower, and movement forward. It represents overcoming obstacles through focused action and discipline. So we can see this warrior who's on a chariot drawn by two sphinxes, light and dark, symbolizing overcoming obstacles through balance and willpower. You'll notice that the sphinxes also represent that's why I love the High Priestess. There's so much with the High Priestess. Make sure that you guys can see this without, yeah, you guys can see that. The pillars. So the Chariot is about balance, control, directedness, and willpower. Now, this makes a lot of sense because this path connects Bina to gevura, or bina to gevura. Bina, structure and order. What is gevura? Willpower, discipline, restriction, setting boundaries. That's what gevura represents. So this is what, do you see how it takes the two energies and combines it? We have, structure and pattern combined with willpower and discipline. You get the Chariot. Not only that, but it follows the Lovers, which makes sense. So after the Lovers introduces duality and opposites, the Chariot comes along and says, okay, now let's put these opposing energies to work together in a unified way. This is about having left brain and right brain working together to move you towards your goals. You see how each one builds? This is just duality in general. This is about directedness, willpower, moving it to your goals, okay? So in terms of the descent into remember, because this represents the descent of spirit into matter, we have matter going through all these different phases. It divides itself into duality, and now these powers of dualities are harnessed to continue doing work in creation. So this is purposeful movement and disciplined action, making the universe evolve through harnessing these dualistic powers, these dualistic aspects. Next, we have strength. Traditionally, strength represents inner peace, courage, patience, resilience, and gentle control. Calmly facing challenges and integrating your emotions with your actions. We can see a woman who's calmly holding the mouth of an open lion. So what this represents, it's a lot about balance again here. This symbolizes inner strength and the ability to have courage, but also power over the wild beast, basically. You have this control and power over the wild beast, who is red, which represents that fiery passion. And is this not perfect to represent chesed, the path between chesed and gevura? Chesed and gevura are, or hesed and gevura. Hesed, what does hesed represent? Love, mercy, kindness. What does gevura represent? Willpower, discipline, and restriction and severity. And so you have hesed and gevura, and you have the balance between them. In other words, this card represents, because remember, we have all these, we're in the realm of dualities now. So this represents this balance between the duality of expansion and restriction, kindness and discipline. It's not about forcing control, but rather harmonizing opposite forces in a way that feels balanced and stable. So in other words, strength is about integrating compassion with discipline, but within the cosmic order. Remember, this is all about the descent of spirit into matter. So it's ensuring that the cosmos stays ordered and harmonious, stable, and smoothly balanced. It helps the cosmos continue to grow and evolve steadily without spiraling into chaos or rigidity, which would mean death. So the next card is the Hermit. And the Hermit, let's see, traditionally represents inner guidance, reflection, solitude, and searching for deeper truths. It's about going inside to pause, reflect, and look inward for wisdom. So we have an old man that kind of represents, the archetype of the wise old man in solitude with his thoughts and illuminating the path ahead. You can see the star And ideally, it also represents being a light for others as well. So in terms of the tree of life, it's this path here. And it connects Chesed with Tiferet. Chesed with Tiferet. So remember that Chesed is important and is usually connected with divinity. And because it's the first one below the divine three. So it's very close to divinity. So this is connected very much with divine understanding, divine knowledge, things like that. And it's also connected with Tiferet, which remember is about balance as well as the individual center of subjectivity. So in the path on the tree of life, the path of the hermit represents how universal divine awareness, essentially, descends into a more personal, focused, and subjective consciousness. In short, the hermit is about the step where divine consciousness moves downward from universal expansiveness into a clearly defined individual experience. This one's a little harder to understand because it has to do with like levels of consciousness, but it's hopefully you get what I'm saying here. It's basically about divine consciousness entering into that lower sphere of Tiferet and the center of subjectivity. Next, we have the Wheel of Fortune. The Wheel of Fortune traditionally means cycles, change, fate, life's ups and downs. Might get something good, might get something bad. It reminds you that life constantly moves, constant change, constant motion. Nothing is permanent. So we have a wheel. This is another really cool card. We have a wheel surrounded by figures representing cycles, fate, and change. The four creatures at the corners represent the fixed signs of the zodiac, cycles repeating eternally. So we have a man, an eagle, and a lion, and an ox. They also represent the four elements because this represents an air sign, a water sign, a fire sign, and an earth sign. I know it's weird that the eagle represents water and the man represents air, but whatever. It just does. And so also you can see that we have on the wheel, I don't know if you can see that, but there's a T, an A, an R, an O, and then when you continue the cycle, another T. So tarot. As you go around, it spells tarot. Then also we have Yod He Vav He, which is the tetragrammaton, part of this cycle, but the tetragrammaton also represents the four elements as well. Yod, fire, and He, water, Vav, air, He, final, as earth. So we have four elements again depicted on here. And then what else we have on here? If you can see in here, we have alchemical symbols that also represent the four elements. We have sulfur for fire. We have salt for earth. We have mercury for air. And then we have a symbol for water as well. So a lot going on here. A lot of elements. You know, spin the wheel. What are you going to get? You're going to get fire. You're going to get earth. What are you getting when you spin the wheel? So what does this path mean? This path is from Chesed to Netzach. Chesed to Netzach. So remember, Chesed is the expansive force. What is Netzach? Netzach is essentially associated with emotions. So guess what? There's a lot of volatility here because you have expansiveness with emotions. Expansiveness, growth with, and guess what? Emotions are like, well, what do you get? Emotions are like, what are you going to get? So this is like the energy of spinning the wheel. What are you going to get? Are you in a good mood or a bad mood? What are you happy? You're sad? Chesed to Netzach is the Wheel of Fortune. And so what this represents is essentially, because remember, again, we're structuring reality here. We're seeing how reality gets more and more and more structured as we go down. So this interjects cycles, the natural rhythm, cosmic cycles, patterns, continual change, transformation, repeating over and over. It's like the universe's heartbeat or breath, constantly moving, expanding, contracting, evolving. This continual cycling of energy, expansion, growth, emotion, represents these forces that keep cosmic evolution going and going and going within creation. Next, we have justice. So traditionally, justice represents fairness, balance, truth, accountability, getting what you deserve. It's about making careful decisions with balance and integrity. We can see a figure, a woman here holding a sword, and of course, scales. And this, of course, swords represent, remember, swords is related to air, which is related to intellect. It's about making decisions. The sword makes the decisions. The scales make sure that it's fair and balanced and truthful. So the scales represent balanced decisions or balanced judgment. That is what justice traditionally represents. So, on the path of the tree of life, it connects Gevura or Gevura, which is the realm of what? Willpower, discipline, boundaries, strict control, severity, down to Tiferet, which is, remember, the center of subjective awareness and cosmic harmony and balance. Tiferet always balances everything coming into it. So, while we've seen structure before, like with the Emperor established the general structure that allows for meaningful choices. Is that light? Should it be a little brighter, maybe? Hope that's a little better. So while the Emperor represent the structure for meaningful choices, because we had the Emperor going to Tiferet as well, but now we have Gevura going from Tiferet to Tiferet. Justice takes what the Emperor gave, but goes further. The Emperor just established the general structure that allowed for choice. Justice is about meaningful choice, weighing and evaluating each choice with precision and fairness. So on a personal level, it's about not just decisions, but decisions through balancing and weighing options. Cosmically speaking, after the Wheel of Fortune shows us the importance of universal cycles and rhythms, justice steps in to make sure that everything stays balanced and properly aligned. Think of justice as the universe's way of making sure nothing gets out of control, because the Wheel of Fortune is kind of out of control. You know, it's you don't know what you're going to get. It's cycles, but it's full of energy and emotion. Justice is like putting in the set, clear, strict boundaries within the realm of that we exist in, now within this realm of duality and separation. And justice is making sure that everything stays balanced and harmonious. Now we have precise, careful structure to what will eventually become physical matter and structure to energy. See how there's like a personal and a cosmic interpretation of each of these as well. The next one is the Hanged Man. And no, it's not upside down. He's upside down. So this path, well, first the traditional interpretation. So the traditional interpretation of the Hanged Man is actually about letting go, surrender, and seeing things differently, taking a pause. It's about gaining a new perspective. That's why you're flipped upside down. It's about surrendering and gaining a new perspective. Visually, we can see he's hanging down by one foot, and the halo around his head represents enlightenment from gaining that new perspective. Okay, now here's the thing, though. So this path connects Gevura to Hod. Again, Gevura, cosmic discipline, strict boundaries and limitation. What does Hod represent? It's similar. Structured intellect, left brain thinking, logical, precise patterns, communication. So here we got a lot of structure going on between these two energies. We got discipline, order, restrictiveness, and then the left brain, which puts things into boxes, separates things, orders things. So this path actually is more in line with the reversed meaning of the Hanged Man. Because each of these cards has a reversed meaning, but I'm not getting into that because I don't want to overload with too much information. But the Hanged Man represents new perspectives. What the reversed Hanged Man represents is being bound up and restricted. So essentially, this is about getting, this is so much control and restriction. It's like being bound up. And you can see how it's right directly opposite of the Wheel of Fortune. Because here we had like a lot of energy, a lot of emotion. Now we have a lot of restriction and a lot of logic and intellect. So notice how different they are. The wheel was all about dynamic cycles, constant motion, emotional flow, natural rhythm. Now, in contrast, the hangman, in its reversed meaning, is rigid, structured, careful thinking and intellectual clarity rather than emotional cycles and constant change. But the hangman represents the restriction of cosmic energy, which contrasts a lot with the Wheel of Fortune. And so here is where cosmic force is really becoming rigidly structured. But it's different from justice because it's becoming rigidly structured on an intellectual level, allowing the universe to begin to understand itself on an... See, this is where the universe begins to understand itself on an intellectual level. But we have to be very careful here because this is a lot of restrictive energy. Now, we come to death. So death, of course, most people know, but if you don't know, death's not a scary card. It doesn't mean you're gonna die, even the traditional interpretation. What it means is endings, but endings isn't bad because it also means transformation. For something to end, something else will begin. So it represents endings, change, rebirth, letting go of the old, and it symbolizes necessary changes that lead to new beginnings. That's what death means. And so on the picture, we can see a skeleton in armor riding a horse, symbolizing the death and endings and transformations. And we're seeing how it affects everyone. We have an old man and young children, the end and the beginning. And we have a sun that could be interpreted as either setting or rising, the end or the beginning. There is a lot that we could unpack with this, but we need to move on. This is another, some of these cards are just packed with so much meaning. So what path are we on here? Here. So we have Tiferet, which is, remember, the center of subjective consciousness and balance, downward to Netzach, which is all about emotion and natural cycles. So remember, connected with cycles. So what this is, remember we just had these like strict restriction of the hangman? Well, what we don't want to do is get too restricted. So what allows us to loosen up? Death. Change. Death steps in to shake things up to make sure nothing stays stuck or frozen. See, we had change in general with the Wheel of Fortune, and then structure, restrictiveness. But then death is also a cycle, but it's a very particular kind of cycle. It's the universe's reset button. It introduces endings, but also transformation to keep cosmic energy flowing and evolving. On a cosmic level, in terms of the descent of spirit into matter, it actually does represent the introduction of death. But death is important because it's what allows us on a spiritual level to let go of old patterns. Death makes sure that the universe never gets stuck. It breaks apart things that are too rigid or outdated, freeing up energy for growth, renewal, and fresh possibilities. See how cool this is? We now have death has entered into this cosmic structure of reality. Remember, we haven't gotten to anything physical yet. These are all the patterns that will manifest as physical reality. Next, we have temperance. And temperance represents balance, moderation, harmony, patience, integration. It's about blending different aspects of life to create harmony and stability. This is another one with so much. We have an angel calmly pouring water between two cups, symbolizing harmony and balance and blending opposite energies together. If you can see, there's a triangle on his chest that represents fire. His wings represent air. His foot in the water represents water. His foot on the ground represents earth. One foot is on earth, one foot is in water as well, showing balance. And he has the symbol for spirit on his forehead. A very integrative symbol. On the tree, temperance connects Tiferet, our center of awareness and center of balance, downward to Yesod. Yesod is, in terms of us personally, is the unconscious mind, the realm of the unconscious. Cosmically, it's the energetic foundation of what will eventually be, of what will become the material world. This is the foundation. It's not the material world yet, but it's what it forms the foundation of the material realm. So like the mental domain that will give rise to it. But personally, it represents the unconscious. So in other words, after we got the wild energy of the Wheel of Fortune, the bound hanged man, we need some balance. So after death clears away stuck energies, temperance carefully blends and balances the cosmic forces into the foundation of existence. So we got a lot of crazy chaos and cycles, restrictiveness. Oh man, let's clear this up through death. Now let's balance it all with temperance. Here's an interesting one. The devil. Now, the devil traditionally represents, let's see where he is on the path here, traditionally represents attachment, temptation, illusion, addiction, feeling stuck or powerless, the ego, representing also your shadow self, and ideally freeing yourself from limitations. And if you'll notice, it very much reflects the lovers. Very similar cards. I love this. I hope you guys are excited about this. I think it's so cool. So here, remember we had the introduction of duality? Well, in this path, we have here they're integrated and working together through the higher self. Here, the devil has separated them. They are chained. So the devil connects Tiferet to Hod. Tiferet is the center of our subjectivity and represents subjective awareness. Downward to Hod, which is left brain, intellect, putting things in boxes, structures. What kind of boxes does it put into? Like male and female. So basically, the devil shows, or the devil is the introduction of illusion and separation. Think of the devil as the point where the universe and our individual minds and souls become intensely attached to form, structure, and material reality. Here we experience the illusion of being separate, isolated individuals, disconnected from our other half, disconnected from our balanced nature. This is really where the ego starts to take control. Now, there's nothing wrong with the ego, but an ego mired in illusion, that's when it becomes the devil, creating a false sense of separation, breaking the harmony between our masculine and feminine counterparts. So this is an important one to ponder, because you know what? This world is really ruled by the devil right now. So much separation, illusion, disharmony, conflict. So it's an important one. Next, we have the tower. Do you see how we're descending and it's getting a little crazy as spirit starts to really get closer and closer to the material world? Stuff starts to get kind of bumpy. The ride gets pretty bumpy here. So it's right. You can't, it's behind temperance, but it's the path from Netzach to Hod. So what is the traditional interpretation of the tower? Sudden change, upheaval, chaos, unexpected events. It symbolizes the breaking down of structures or belief that don't serve you. So here we have a burning tower struck by lightning with people falling, symbolizing sudden upheaval, revelation, chaos, and the breakdown of outdated beliefs. But here on the tree, what does it represent as the spirit descends into matter? Well, the tower connects Netzach, our emotional side, or what we might call our feminine side, to Hod, our intellectual side, or what we might call our masculine side. Well, remember, the devil just created the illusion of separation, disconnecting our emotional feminine energies from our intellect masculine energies, and the tower represents the point where these two opposing forces consciously collide, clash, and conflict. It's the explosive moment when our disharmonized emotional and intellectual sides collide. You can probably imagine someone who's super logical and someone who's super emotional. If the logical person isn't in touch with their feelings and their emotional person isn't in touch with their logic, what's going to happen? They're probably going to clash. That's what this represents, but on an internal level, because you have those energies in you. It's your internal consciousness clashing with that separation that has been created. And remember, I'm going to, at the end here, tell you why any of this even matters and why we're understanding this. But we're understanding this structure of descent of spirit into matter. I say it again and again because a lot of people forget why we're even doing this or what this is about. So I want to keep a constant reminder of what we're doing here, what this stuff represents. Next, we have the star. I love this card. This is such a pretty card. I like the star card a lot. So the traditional interpretation of the star, which let's get the path here. The traditional interpretation of the star is hope, inspiration, renewal, healing, optimism, and inner guidance. It's about believing in brighter possibilities. Now, visually, of course, we can see a peaceful woman pouring water onto land and into air, symbolizing that hope, renewal, intuition, and emotional nourishment. We have the stars above that show divine guidance. And by the way, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stars, and each of the 8 stars have 8 points. And the reason why that is interesting is because the star of Venus has 8 points. Traditionally speaking, the star of Venus is represented by 8 points. And the planet associated with Netzach is Venus. So there's a lot going on here. And also, what's really cool as well, in terms of numerology, it's card number 17. But in numerology, you add those together. So 17 would be 7 plus 1, which is 8. So there's a lot. There's basically 888 you got here. You got 8 stars with 8 points and the numerological value of 8, all representing the star of Venus. Such a cool card. Such a good card. All right, but what the hell does it mean in our path here? The star connects Netzach, the sphere of emotional energy, down to Yesod, the realm of our unconscious mind. It represents the flow of feminine emotional insight descending into the deeper parts of ourselves, populating the unconscious with dreams, inspiration, intuitive knowledge. It's about the gentle descent of emotional wisdom and feminine insight into our unconscious. Next, we have the moon. We're getting very close to matter now. Traditionally, the moon is kind of a spooky card. It represents illusion, fear, confusion, the unconscious, dreams, and instinct. That's a very important one. Instinct. That's why we have the wolf. It basically warns you that things might not be as they seem. That's your traditional interpretation. So we have the moon above with a wolf and a dog and a crayfish emerging from the water. And this is all representing like primal instinct. This, old creature crawling out of the depths. Instinctual creature, the instinctual howling. A lot of instincts going on here. But also like illusion, unconscious, etc. So what does this mean in terms of the path of the moon? The path of the moon, we have Netzach, which is our emotional realm, downward to Malkut, the physical material world. So we have emotions, physicality. What this represents, the moon is the stage where emotions become primal instincts and deeply rooted drives. This is the stage of the development and descent of consciousness into the form of instincts. instinctual behavior, animal level responses, fear, desire, hunger, survival urges. Because remember, we have physical and emotion. That's what those two energies give rise to. Our instinctual reactions. So the moon symbolizes the descent of emotional energy into raw instinct and primal unconscious patterns. Now we have the sun. The sun I probably should have told you the path numbers for all these as well. Oh well, this is path 30, by the way. The traditional interpretation of the sun is clarity, positivity, success, joy, vitality, optimism. It's about being alive, confident, and connected to your purpose. So we have this happy little guy, little kid, riding a horse, being all joyful, radiant sun, sunflowers blooming, a lot of energy here. Okay, so what does it represent on the Tree of Life? This one is interesting here, so bear with me here. What this one represents, the sun connects Hod, which is, remember, the sphere of intellect, logic, and clear thought, down into Yesod, which is the unconscious and foundation. So the sun is kind of the opposite of the star. Remember, the star was feminine emotion connected to the unconscious. Now we have masculine intellect connected to the unconscious. Now, there are two ways that we can interpret this. All right? So we can interpret this as the sun introducing masculine intellectual clarity and structure. Remember, it's not about literal gender here. So remember, there's plenty of women that have clarity and structure, and this applies to non-binary individuals and gender fluid individuals as well. We could, instead of saying male and female, we could say positive and negative. But remember, these are using, like, this is story form. You're understanding this stuff in story form. So basically, the sun path symbolizes how rational, logical thinking descends into our deeper unconscious. So this can mean two things here. Either it can mean that it illuminates the unconscious with clear understanding and organized thought, right? You are using your intellect, clear logical intellect, to examine the waters of the unconscious. Or what it can also mean is the intellectual masculine aspect becoming unconscious. Because remember, this is all descent into matter, so this is about splitting apart. And so many people, this is what Carl Jung would talk about, the anima and the animus. So Carl Jung said that every man had an inner feminine called the anima, and every woman had an inner masculine called the animus. Now, these gender binaries are kind of outdated. In the Neogenian system, we talk about the mirror self, which is just our inner opposite, so it applies to anybody. But in this story form, if we're talking about this, someone who is not balanced will either have feminine energy in their unconscious, untapped, or masculine energy in their unconscious, untapped. So what we can understand this to mean is that in the unconscious, we have masculine and feminine energies, but they have to be tapped into. Most people don't. They just do one or the other. Remember, we've had all this separation and clashing, and so it gets thrown into the unconscious. It's there, but it's unconscious. Hopefully that makes sense. Always, if some of this doesn't make sense, drop a comment so I'll know either to clarify in the comments or in a follow-up video. But hopefully you can see how a lot of this stuff mirrors each other. So we have the descent of the feminine into the unconscious, the descent of the masculine into the unconscious. All right, where are we here? Another cool card. Most of them are cool. Judgment. Here we have judgment. Zombies! Kind of. So the traditional interpretation of judgment is, guess what? Awakening. Waken the dead. Awakening. Rebirth, renewal, realization. A powerful moment of clarity calling you to rise to a new awareness. We have figures rising from the coffin to the angel's trumpet that symbolizes that awakening, rebirth, and renewal, and answering to a higher call. It's you're waking up. Okay, but what does it mean on our path here? Because we're going from Hod, intellect, to Malkut, the physical. Well, after the moon formed deep, instinctual, unconscious patterns, judgment introduces the crucial step of awakening conscious awareness. So it's the awakening of conscious awareness. But this awakening also brings the experience of separation. See, they're all separated. So it's not higher consciousness. We're descending. So this is consciousness. It's the awakening to consciousness, but this is almost like connecting to an avatar and waking up in the holos and seeing yourself as separate from others. So we have consciousness, but we're separate. We have that, it's that separation of consciousness. So think of judgment as the cosmic wake-up call, where we suddenly see ourselves as separate from the unified consciousness. Judgment is about awakening and separation. Consciousness becoming fully distinct and structured, ready to enter the physical world and experience it as individual beings. Now, we have the world. The world's traditional interpretation means completion, achievement. The fuck? Achievement. My notes say achievement and wholeness, and I just merged it into achieveness. Achievement and wholeness, fulfillment and harmony. It's the successful completion of a cycle and integration of all parts into a cohesive whole. So here we can see a figure surrounded by a wreath. Wreath, of course, is representing completion. And the four corners, we saw these on the Wheel of Fortune. These are the four fixed signs of the zodiac, but also represent the four elements. We have air, water, fire, and earth. So this is, okay, so that's what's true. So what does it mean on the path of the world? It links Yesod, which is the realm of the unconscious, but also in terms cosmically, it's the foundation. So Yesod is basically like everything gets packed into Yesod. And then, poof, it gives rise to the material world. So after all the previous steps, prepared clear structures, defined boundaries, gave rise to distinct identities, the world represents the final the cosmic step, which is, of course, full, tangible manifestation into physical reality. This represents, finally, the birth and completion of physical reality. Not the completion as in like the end, but all the elements are there that to the point where we are now in bodies on earth in the world. So think of the world as the point where everything previously invisible, conceptual, becomes real and concrete. It symbolizes the full descent of spiritual energy all the way into waking up in a body in matter, resulting in the physical world we actually experience in terms of separation. The world basically symbolizes the endpoint of the cosmic descent, complete manifestation of the physical world. But this comes at a price, because this is where spirit becomes fully bound and trapped within the limitations of material existence. We wake up in an avatar, driven when we start here. This is where we start. We wake up in our avatar. Once spirit descends, this is where we wake up. In the world, in our avatar, mostly driven by instincts and the illusion of separation. So this is us here in the world, or someone who's just starting out with basic consciousness. In the world, in an avatar, driven by instinct, within the illusion of separation. And a consciousness of separation. Now, interestingly, guess what? For those who are familiar with Gnosticism, this figure is Sophia. This figure is Sophia. Why is this figure Sophia? Because remember, in Gnosticism, Sophia is responsible for the creation of the material world. She wants to create something on her own, and what happens? The material world is created. In some Gnostic myths, ones that we haven't really explored on my channel yet, but in some Gnostic myths, Sophia, not only does she create the material world, but she becomes trapped in it. And she forgets what she is. And she has to find her way back to divinity. So you can think of this as that descent of spirit into matter as like Sophia's journey as well. It's not just the fool's journey, it's kind of Sophia's journey. And guess what? Each of us are Sophia, because Sophia, in these terms, archetypally represents waking up in the world of matter as trapped souls that don't remember what we are. Isn't that cool? Not that, but the story, how it all aligns. Remember, this is about symbolically understanding the structure of reality, not rigorously, objectively, and mathematically. That's meta-rationalism. This is Terra, and coupled with the Tree of Life, to understand it symbolically, which is very helpful for many people to get things that click. But is it more important than that? Yes, it's more important than that. The reason, because while this is interesting, what we've been doing this whole time is actually setting the stage for something else. Because remember, the end is the beginning. Always, the end is the beginning is the end. So when we get to the end of the cosmic descent, what we just described was the cosmic descent of spirit into matter and all the various structures that got us there. What happens at the end? We wake up in this world, but we don't know what we are, where we are, or why we are here. In an illusory world of separation, mostly driven by instincts, what do? So, what we just described was the path from the top of the tree to the bottom of the tree. This represents the cosmic scale. On a cosmic scale, it represents reality structuring itself into the material world, spirit in general descending into matter. It's a cosmic view. Now, what we're going to do next is start from the bottom and go to the top of the tree. And this is completely different. And this is where we can really start to learn and evolve. Because from the top to the bottom to the top represents the path of ascent, sometimes known as the serpent's path. And in the future, I'll show you why it's called the serpent's path. But what's really cool about this is the path from the bottom to the top represents spirit's journey from material consciousness to God consciousness, the return. But going from the bottom to the top is on an individual level. So going from the top to the bottom, cosmic level of structuring spirit's descent into matter. When we go from the bottom to the top, it's going to represent our individual journey as a mind, our personal path. It's no longer about the cosmos. It's now our personal path as an individual soul who is trapped in matter, climbing up the tree. And each path that we travel will have lessons and instructions to enable us to reach higher and higher levels of consciousness. So it's about raising our consciousness from the very basic, worldly, instinctual, separate, low-level consciousness world all the way up to God consciousness. So when we explore the path of ascent, also known as the serpent's path, we are starting here, and it's going to describe our individual, personal soul's journey and what we need to do. It's not the same, right? It's not like, oh, well, what do you mean? I'll just reverse everything that you told me. It's not exactly like that, because we basically just represented the structure of existence. This is now on a personal, soulful level of raising consciousness and the obstacles that we need to overcome and the lessons we need to integrate to reach higher levels of consciousness. And so we are going to start right here in the world, run by instincts, the illusion of separation, and make our way to the very top through these paths. And remember, if you've seen the previous video, these paths also represent our power self, which is our purpose. Our power self represents our purpose and our strive to become beyond human. And so our purpose will become unveiled as we ascend the tree and begin to light up those paths. You're going to light up those paths like there are neurons connecting in the brain. You're going to light up those paths like a neural network connecting and becoming cohesive, whole, and powerful. Extremely important. Really important. So this took longer than I thought it would. But that's what we're going to do next. If you guys want to see it, of course, tell me in the comments. If you guys want to see now the path from the serpent's ascending path, how to light up those connections and reach the highest levels of consciousness. Because really, this was just a foundation, setting the stage, setting the story, setting the symbols. So now we can begin to work with it. I hope you guys really enjoyed this. I did. I thought this stuff was cool. Let me know in the comments. Tell me, though. I'm always interested in what you guys like and what you want to see. And remember that for members, I'll eventually be releasing notes for this in a PDF form that you can download. That's going to have all this info with pictures and diagrams for you to be able to check out anytime. Links for my past ones, too, are in the description of this video. So become a member, helps out the channel a lot, helps spread this information, because this isn't just a channel. This is about a revolution of consciousness and making enlightenment go viral here. So it helps out a lot. I appreciate it. Helps me be able to reach more people, make better content. Check out my books. If you like what we talk about here, this book is going to be a great companion. It's not about tarot or anything like that, but it talks about the structures of the psyche that are involved, such as the shadow self, the mirror self, the power self, hyper-awareness, metacognition, concept networking, phenomenological experience, will forming, manifestation, even what free will is and how to reach elevated will, etc. Anyway, check it out. And thank you guys very much. Links to all that crap is in the description of this video. And I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys. Big shout out to everyone, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, DB, Dallas, Nusalina, Vuonli, Celsus, Chris Magistus, TDFD, 369, Sophia, Raven Jade, and everyone else. Thank you very much.